the last game that we have to talk about on this episode of the podcast, we have Notre Dame traveling on the road to take on Ohio State. This game is going to be played this Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Ohio State currently is a 17-point favorite entering this matchup. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I feel like a lot of people are overlooking Notre Dame. And I can understand why a lot of people are rolling their eyes saying, here we go, JT. Are you one of those people drinking the Kool-Aid on Notre Dame? And I'm not. But I do think that Notre Dame is a top 10 team talent-wise. Because if you really look at this roster top to bottom, this is probably the best Notre Dame team that me personally, I've seen in the last decade. They have, in my opinion, one of the best offensive lines in college football heading into this season. They have a really good defensive line that not only is good against the run, but they can get pressure on the quarterback. However, there's a reason why Ohio State is a 17-point favorite in this game. And it's not because I don't think Notre Dame is a talented football team, but it's simply for the fact that Ohio State is just simply a more talented football team. And I think that the two most talented teams in college football this season are Alabama and Ohio State. So when you look at Notre Dame, it's going to take some giant performances all the way around for them to be able to pull off this upset. But if there is a path for an upset, what is it for Notre Dame? What does Notre Dame have to do to at least keep this game close into the fourth quarter? Well, the first thing that has to happen is that they need a great performance from their new starting quarterback, Tyler Buckner. Now, Tyler Buckner is making his first ever collegiate start for Notre Dame, but this is somebody who has gotten a little bit of in-game action, so it's not like he hasn't gotten any playing time at all, but this is his first ever true start. And he has to make it on the road in a hostile environment against Ohio State. So if you are Tyler Buckner, you are somebody who has a very good arm. You're a phenomenal athlete. And as a matter of fact, you probably could say that Tyler Buckner is the most talented quarterback that Notre Dame has had in a very long time. Like, this is somebody who, in my opinion, is a true dual threat quarterback. He can make all the throws. I think he has pretty good accuracy. And if Notre Dame's going to win this game, he pretty much has to have a Heisman kind of performance, because Notre Dame's offensive line is going to give him time to throw the football. It really just comes down to him making accurate throws on time and making good decisions with the football, because oftentimes when you have a young quarterback that's playing on the road in an environment like this, they press the issue too much and they try to do too much. So for Tyler Buckner, he has to let the game come to him. And it's also going to be on offensive coordinator Tommy Rees to make sure that he gets Tyler Buckner settled into this game. And that's going to be really hard to do because Ohio State has a new defensive coordinator who is Jim Knowles. Now, for those of you guys who don't really keep up with the coaching changes and the staff changes, Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator of Oklahoma State last season. And Oklahoma State also had a really good defense, a historically good defense. So he comes over to Ohio State, a team that struggled on the defense side of the football a lot. And many Ohio State fans are expecting immediate improvement right away from Jim Knowles. So I think that the battle between offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, Tommy Rees, and defensive coordinator for Ohio State, Jim Knowles, is going to be something that many people aren't going to be keeping their eyes on, but it's going to be a chess match that I'm going to be watching. Now, another thing that Notre Dame has to do to win this game, outside of making sure that Tyler Buckner has a good performance and they allow him to get settled in and get hot early, is the fact that on the defensive side of the football, if you're Marcus Freeman, you don't want to allow a lot of big plays in the passing game. As a matter of fact, you can't allow any big plays in the passing game because Ohio State will absolutely crush you. Not just Is Ohio State good at making good plays down the field vertically? Because they have CJ Stroud and the most talented wide receiver group in all of college football this year with Jackson Smith and Marvin Harrison Jr. But they also have receivers who can all do damage to you after the catch. So you got to make sure that you wrap up. And you also got to make sure that you don't allow these wide receivers to burn you downfield. And the only way I can really see Notre Dame slowing down Ohio State's passing attack is if their pass rush can hit home. They need their star pass rusher, Isaiah Foxy, to have a monster game. You remember the performance that Aiden Hutchinson had last season? And I know a lot of Ohio State fans don't want to remember this, but they need that kind of performance out of Isaiah Foxy. Because this is somebody who I think has the potential to become a top 10 pick in the 2023 NFL draft. But for him to become a top 10 pick, he has to show out in games like this. And not just him, but the whole entire defensive line has to have a fantastic performance in this game if Notre Dame wants to be able to pull off the upset. Because listen, Notre Dame secondary is pretty good. But at the same time, pretty good isn't going to be enough to stop great when you have the kind of wide receivers that Ohio State has. So to help out that secondary, you got to have that pass rush going. And I think that CJ Stroud is a really phenomenal quarterback. However, I do think that he can get rattled when you are able to get a couple of good hits on him. So you got to make sure that you can get pressure on him. And you don't really need to get sacks, really. You just got to get pressure. You just got to get some hits on him. You got to make him uncomfortable in the pocket because CJ Stroud is a true pocket passer. Even though he does have some athleticism, he doesn't really use it all that much. So you got to get CJ Stroud outside the pocket, and you have to make him uncomfortable. And for that to happen, their pass rush has to be big for them tonight. Now, when you look at Notre Dame's offense, one thing that concerns me is their wide receiver position. Now, their wide receivers aren't bad. I just think that they're not great, okay? Lorenzo Styles, Jaden Thomas, Avery Davis are expected to be the three starters at receiver for Notre Dame. And when you're playing a team like Ohio State, like, you have to be able to beat them through the air as well, not just on the ground. And for Jim Knowles, you know, him making his debut as DC for Ohio State, I expect him to be really aggressive. This is somebody who's known for having a very aggressive defense, and you have to wonder how Tyler Buckner is going to respond to, you know, such an aggressive defense in his first ever start. And I look at these wide receivers, they're all right, but I don't know. I'm just not really all that impressed with Notre Dame's receiving core. I do think that you do have a guy in Jaden Thomas who does have a lot of potential, but is he going to be able to come out and have a phenomenal game right away off the bat for Notre Dame? It's just that the wide receiver position, I think, when you're playing a team like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or Clemson, you got to beat them by having a good group of wide receivers. And I look at Notre Dame's receivers, they're not bad. I'm not trying to say they're crappy. I'm just saying that they're all right in terms of, you know, the talent level that they currently have. And I think that for Notre Dame, they don't need all right to win this game. They need great wide receiver play. Now, you do have Michael Mayer, who is one of the best tight ends in college football. He's definitely going to have a large workload when it comes to the passing game in this matchup, but at the same time, you need somebody other than him to step up. So I'm trying to figure out who's going to be that other wide receiver who steps up for Notre Dame in this game, because like I said, I think their wide receiver position is solid, but at the same time, you need great if you're going to be able to pull off the upset against Ohio State. So the team that I'm going to take to win this game, obviously I'm going to take Ohio State to get the win here. It's not that I think that Ohio State is just an overwhelmingly better team than Notre Dame, because I do think that Notre Dame is really good up front in the trenches. However, it's the fact that they have a young quarterback going on the road against Ohio State in a really hostile environment. And it's hard for me to see him having a kind of performance that Notre Dame needs for them to win this game. They need a Heisman-worthy performance for them to pull off this upset. And I know that the rushing attack is going to be there for Notre Dame. On top of that, you're going to have Buckner, who's also going to contribute on the ground. But at the same time, when it comes to me having faith in Tyler Buckner being able to make big throws to either help Notre Dame win this game or to keep Notre Dame in this game, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it simply for the fact that I don't have the confidence in him yet. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be great. I think he's going to be really good. It's just the fact that this is his first ever start week 1 against Ohio State on the road. It's a really tough environment for any quarterback. So I don't know if he's going to be able to necessarily make the big throws needed for Notre Dame to pull off the upset. So I'm going to take Ohio State to win this game. 38-24 is going to be my final score prediction for this matchup. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Remember that every video that's uploaded on the channel is available in audio format on every single podcasting platform. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from, the JT Sports Podcast is available.